Welcome. This is Jason Clemens, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemens, DC. We are coming to you live from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas, and on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. We're also coming to you on all of our social media pages on the Rock Health and Wellness Centers at Facebook. We're also on YouTube at Health from the Rock, and we're on X at Dr. Jason Clemens, DC. Maybe just Jason Clemens, DC. I don't think that Dr. Jason Clemens, DC is a repetitive. We wouldn't do that. So Jason Clemens, DC. You can catch us on all of those platforms. You can stream us at 987radio.com. If you're listening to us on the radio, you can pick us up on the Live 365 app. We've got all that stuff. We're everywhere. So if you want us, you got us. We're coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios. And it's Thursday, July 24th, July 25th, whatever day it is. It's been busy around here today. We've been solid at it since 6 a.m. this morning. We've been taking care of people, new patients, all kinds of stuff going on. Brain mapping been going on here in the office today. It's just been great. So I hope you guys had a great day. Hope you guys have had a great week. We've had some really good shows. They're kind of interesting in some of the topics that we picked this week. And we started off Monday talking about some anxiety medication in 8 to 10-year-olds and some of the things that we can do to solve those problems and kind of how the brain works and what we can do to help the brain. And then on Tuesday night, we got into attention and talked about the 5 levels of attention and how they fired in each side of the brain and got into some of the details of attention. So, and then last night we had our book review, and we went through our book review, which was pretty cool. We introduced the Dr. Daniel Amen's book, the Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. That's the book that we introduced last night on one of our book reviews. And we hadn't done a book review in quite some time, but we did one last night. And we just didn't get through a lot of it. We introduced Dr. Amen. We introduced the book. We went through the introduction. We talked about the brain, what was going on with the brain. Had a really cool text last night after the show from one of our listeners that listens to the show all the time. And she said she had just watched a YouTube video, and it's a TED Talk. It's TEDx Orange Coast. Daniel Amen, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And she listened to it on YouTube. She sent me the link. If I knew how to put links together on this, I would probably do that. I might be able to copy it and post it and put it on the Facebook page afterwards. But she said she watched it and it was great. And it was something that I neglected to mention last night because I think I'd seen that same thing. That's kind of what kind of got me restarted, is listening to some of those TED Talks. And listening to Dr. Amen speak on the TED Talks. I think that's where I first really started to hear him talk about the SPECT scans and how, the 220-something thousand scans that he's done in his lifetime. And it piqued my interest. And, he does the SPECT scans, but he also does the neurofeedback. And that's something that we do here in the office at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, is we also do the neurofeedback. So what I wanted to do tonight is I wanted to just continue and really get kind of deep into the different parts of the brain. And especially tonight, I wanted to get into what he called the deep limbic system. And it's the early stages of development of the brain. It's that 0 to age 12 type of brain development that we always talk about in the lower emotional brain, that reptilian and that mammalian brain that can combine to make the emotional brain. And that limbic system is developing during that time. And Dr. Amen does a really good job in his book. He goes through the limbic system, the basal ganglia, the prefrontal cortex, the temporal lobe. He goes to the cingulate gyrus. He goes through all of those areas of the brain in the book. And we will probably spend some time breaking that down as we go through time to try to see each one of those areas and kind of copy and just read from the book. So that's really what I wanted to look into. The name of the chapter is Looking into Love and Depression. And it goes over the deep limbic system. So that's really what I wanted to do tonight. I just wanted to take this book, take chapter 3, Looking into Love and Depression, because we didn't really get into enough of it last night. And I think it would be very helpful to the people, to you guys that listen to the show. So we're just going to get after it right now. Appreciate Susan for sending that video. We'll try to make sure that link gets to you guys, or you can just go to TED Talks, go to YouTube, search for Dr. Daniel Amen, Amen, and you can go search for him, and that TED Talk will come up, and he will explain to you what's going on. So let's get into this chapter 3, looking into love and depression, the deep limbic system. Functions of the deep limbic system. It sets the emotional tone of the mind, filters external events through internal states, creates emotional coloring, tags events as internally important, stores highly charged emotional memories, modulates motivation, controls appetite and sleep cycles, promotes bonding, directly processes the sense of smell, and modulates libido. So those are all the functions that's going on. So the deep limbic system lies near the center of the brain. Considering its size, about the size of a walnut, it is power-packed with functions, all of which are critical for human behavior and survival. From an evolutionary standpoint, this is an older part of the mammalian brain that enabled animals to experience and express emotions. Now, we've talked about that in the past, so don't get all upset about that sentence, but it freed them from the stereotypical behavior of actions dictated by the brain stem found in the older reptilian brain. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about this early stage of development in human beings, not evolutionary I'm talking about early stage of birth. Think about the type of brain that you have on the day that you're born. That's what we're calling your reptilian brain. What you're able to do with your brain on the day you're born. You can digest your food. You can, it's just the simple stuff, and I don't even like even talking about it. But it's peeing and pooping and sleeping and breathing and crying. There's not a lot that we can do. That's that very simple brain. But man, that thing is working, and it's trying to build those synapses, and it's trying to develop itself. And the type of environment that the patient is in, the type of environment that the baby is going to dictate to us how that limbic system develops. And you can just imagine if you're in a very controlled environment, you're in a very comfortable environment, you're in a very loving and nurturing environment. If your mother loves you and she pays attention to you, and you start to develop those neural pathways that give you the confidence and the security and all of that inside of you, then you'll have an increased chance of having emotional stability. But if you're in a situation where your mother doesn't pay any attention to you, or she's got some sort of problem of her own, or you're not very well taken care of, or your needs are not met, then your limbic system develops a little bit differently. And you end up with some challenges along the way that you didn't necessarily know why, but you start to develop. So that older reptilian brain and that mammalian brain makes up the emotional brain, and that's what we're talking about tonight. The subsequent evolution of the surrounding cerebral cortex in higher animals, especially humans, gave us the capacity for problem solving, planning, organization, and rational thought. Yet, in order for these functions to have an effect in the world, one must have passion, emotion, and the desire to make something happen. The deep limbic system adds the emotional spice, if you will, in both positive and negative ways. If it's not taken care of properly, it does it in a negative way, and if it's taken care of properly, it'll add all those things in a positive way. The part of the brain is involved in setting emotional tone. When the limbic system is less active, there is generally a positive, more hopeful state of mind. When it is heated up or overactive, negativity can take over. This finding actually surprised my colleagues at the clinic and me at first. We thought the excessive activity in the part of the brain that controlled emotion might correlate with enhanced feelings of all kind, not solely negative ones. Yet we noticed again and again, when this area was overactive in the SPECT, it correlated with the subject's depression and negativity. It seems that when the deep limbic system is inflamed, painful emotional shading results. New research on depression and other laboratories around the world has borne this out. Now, it's something that we go back to all the time, and you've heard me say it lots of times in the past, that healthy people inhibit. Healthy people inhibit. Remember that. So what they're saying right here is when that area of the limbic system is not being inhibited, it starts to create negative emotions for us. An overactive limbic system is a negative, it creates negative problems for us. And it gets to be an overactive limbic system because it's not being inhibited. A healthy person is going to inhibit that area of the brain and keep it calm, right? When you lose the ability to inhibit, the brain takes off, and then you get the negative emotion. This emotional shading provided by the deep limbic system is the filter through which you interpret the events of the day. It colors events depending on your emotional state of mind. When you are sad with an overactive deep limbic system, you are likely to interpret neutral events through a negative filter. For example, if you have a neutral or even positive conversation with someone whose deep limbic system is overactive or negatively set, he or she is likely to interpret the conversation in a negative way. When this part of the brain is cool or functions properly, a neural or positive interpretation of the event is more likely to occur. We all know that's true, right? When we're very emotional about something, when we get fussy about something with our spouse, if I get fussy with Leslie about something and then I come to work, I'm just like seeing the whole day irritated, right? Like I'll just see everything. It's just like, yeah, why are we doing this way, and why can't we get that fixed like that? And what is somebody take out the trash and let's I know y'all. It's hard for y'all to believe that I'm fussy sometimes. Yeah, I am. I'm just a little fussy, and a lot of it has to do with Leslie. That's 100% true. Like if she and I are getting along with each other, I can almost take on the entire world. And if she and I are fussing with each other, it almost seems like gloom and doom, like the whole thing's going to crash. And I know I'm not the only one out there that feels that way. So don't you guys start thinking that, making out like I'm the only one that has that issue. I think a lot of us do, right? The valence or charge we give to certain events in our lives drives us to action, such as approaching a desired mate or cause avoiding behavior, withdrawing from someone who has hurt us in the past, right? How we see it, how we label things, how we define things is how we react to them. PMS, discussed in the previous chapter, is a classic example of this emotional shading principle. As mentioned in our study of PMS, within 5 to 10 days before the onset of menstruation, the deep limbic system becomes inflamed or more active with the drop in hormones. This deep limbic activation colors events in a more negative way. A friend's wife has a fairly severe case of PMS. He is telling me that during the first week of her cycle, she looks at him with love and affection, and almost anything he does seems right. Yeah, we know it. We've all been there, right? She is more loving and affectionate. 10 days before her period, things are dramatically different. She doesn't want to be touched. She has a different look, which he describes as a combination of a scowl and a don't mess with me look. Yep, we've seen that look before, right? Little he does is right. She emotionally colors most events in a negative way. Then, a few days after her cycle starts, she's back to being more positive, loving, and affectionate. Yeah, I said that on last night's show. I said that we will say that she's just witchy. If we knew this guy and we were talking about her friend, his wife, and we'd say, man, that girl, man, she's a piece of work, right? But really, once we understand the brain, that's kind of what I was trying to say last night. Once we understand the brain, And once we understand how different parts of the brain work, when we start to see somebody that's acting that way, we should default to the idea that the reason that they're acting that way is because of the way that their brain is functioning at the moment. Now, you could easily say, hey, look, not every woman's that way and not every man's that way or whatever. We're just using the PMS as an example, right? Because Dr. Amen's talking about it in his book. But that that um, but that particular thing is like, look, maybe we would be a little bit more tolerant if we understood the way people's brains worked. Maybe we would be more tolerant with the people that we work with. Maybe we would be more tolerant of the people at the grocery store or the bank or driving down the street or wherever we might deal with people if we really understood that behavior is brain function, and that brain is getting physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses. I just think we would just be able to breathe a little bit deeper and get along just a little bit better with people. I think there is some serious impact when we study this stuff, right? The deep limbic system, along with the deep temporal lobes, has also been reported to be involved in storing highly charged emotional memories, both positive and negative. If you have been traumatized by a traumatic event, such as being in a car accident or watching your house burn down, or if you have been abused by a parent or spouse, the emotional component of the memory is stored in the deep limbic system of the brain. And if you have won the lottery, graduated magna cum laude, or watched your child's birth, those emotional memories are stored here as well. So both positive and negative memories, the total experience of our emotional memories is responsible in part for the emotional tone of our mind. It's stored in there, right? The more stable, positive experiences we have, the more positive we are likely to feel. The more trauma in our lives, the more emotionally set we become in a negative way. These emotional memories are intimately involved in the emotional tagging we impose in the day's events. That's part of the reason when I read Candace Pert's Molecules of Emotion way back in when we were in chiropractic school, and I listened to a guy named Patrick Gentempo explain something one time. It's like you got to think about these stored memories that are deep in the limbic system, and you got to think about how these deeply stored memories are accessed through pathways or neural pathways that fire in a certain pattern. And I want to use your spine as an example, and I want to use the little like a briefcase. If you guys remember those little briefcases that had the three little combination numbers on each side, and you had to like flip those combination numbers you had to set the combination to the briefcase, or the little button wouldn't pop open and you couldn't open the briefcase. It's old school for anybody who's young that might be listening to this show. But us old school people, we understand that. We've seen those briefcases before. Well, your spine is that way. And in Candace Pert's research, and what she discovered is that a lot of emotion is chemical. It's not just smoke and mirrors. It's not just some sort of illusion. You have to have some sort of chemical or neurology to have an emotion at all. That's how it works. And a lot of those chemicals are stored in our spinal column. And just imagine your spine from top to bottom being the combination lock that goes up from your sacrum all the way up to your occiput. And you've got those 24 vertebrae, 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar. You've got that whole system right there that gets set in certain ranges of motion, and it gets set in a certain combination that works all the way up to the top, that fires the neurology, that fires the limbic system. And in neuroplasticity, that is a statement that describes that the more often a pathway fires, the more often that pathway will fire. The more apt it is to fire, the higher percentage that it will be that it will fire. And when you run it and run it and run it again, you tend to fire it. It's kind of how I open this show sometimes. I don't always mean to say we're live from the Rock Health and Wellness Centers in Lubbock, Texas. It's just that I've said it 200 times now, and so now when I get to start the show, if I'm a little bit unfocused or whatever, I'll just start the show and then I'll just immediately say that next sentence, and that's neuroplasticity. Well, if you have a negative emotion because you had some sort of issue as a young person that got stored in that limbic system, and the combination lock of your spine has been set, that every time that combination kind of sets itself in that particular order, it fires into that system and you end up with that negative emotion. One of the things getting adjusted does for you is it just completely messes up all of those pathways. You move the sacrum, and then you move the lumbar spine, and then you move the thoracic spine, and then you move the cervical spine, and then you adjust the occiput, and then you use the extremity to fire into the brain and fire up into the right pathway. What you're actually doing is you're creating a new neuroplasticity that makes it harder to get you back to that limbic system that's stored in your brain. It doesn't mean that it goes away. It just means that it's harder to get you back there. That's why getting adjusted is so important. And I didn't mean to talk about that tonight, but that is a true statement. That's why getting adjusted is so important, because what you actually do is you clear it right there. You clear some of those pathways. You get adjusted, you cover up that neurological pathway. You get adjusted again, you cover up that neurological pathway. You get adjusted again and you think positive thoughts. You reestablish that limbic system. Okay? The deep limbic system also affects motivation and drive. It helps you get going in the morning and encourages you to move throughout the day. Overactivity in this area, in our experience, is associated with lowered motivation and drive, which is often seen in depression. The limbic system, especially the hypothalamus, controls the sleep and appetite cycles in the body. Healthy sleep and appetite are essential to maintaining a proper internal milieu. Both of these components are often a problem with limbic abnormalities. The deep limbic structures are also intimately involved with bonding and social connectedness. When the deep limbic system of animals is damaged, they do not properly bond with their young. In one study of rats, when the deep limbic systems were damaged, mothers would not feed or nurture their young, but would drag them around the cage as if they were inanimate objects. The deep limbic system affects the bonding mechanism that enables you to connect socially with other people. Your ability to do this successfully, in turn, influences your moods. We are social animals. Remember, from the very beginning, number one, be social, right? When we are bonded to people in a positive way, we feel better about ourselves and our lives. This capacity to bond then plays a significant role in the tone and quality of our moods. It goes back to the very beginning. It's why it's so important to have a home. It's why it's so important to have a family and a family structure for a child, so that child grows up and learns how to be connected in a social way. The deep limbic system also directly processes the sense of smell. The olfactory system is the only one of the 5 sensory systems that goes from the sensory organ to directly where it is processed in the brain. So that's a big deal, right? The messages from all other senses, sight, hearing, touch, and taste, are sent to a relay station before they are sent to their final destination in different parts of the brain. When we give someone exercises to do, there's a lot of things like listen to music in one ear to drive the other brain. You can use hand movements over here with your right hand to drive your left brain. But if you're trying to drive your left brain, you can smell through your left nostril. That's going right into that. It goes directly into the side that you're trying to work. Because your sense of smell goes directly to the deep limbic system, it is easy to see why smells can have such a powerful impact on our feeling states. The multi-billion-dollar perfume and deodorant industries count on this fact. Beautiful smells evoke pleasant feelings and draw people toward you, unpleasant smells repel them. So I learned about the limbic system smell connection firsthand. He tells a story about when he changed and borrowed his brother's cologne, and he went out on a date, and his girlfriend moved into the middle of the car and sat next to him and held his hand. And he said, from that point forward, I never went anywhere without his English leather. I thought that was pretty funny right there. Uh, but hey, so we're getting into the limbic system. I want to just I want to keep going here, but we're about to take a break. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back after the break, and then we'll continue into the limbic system, and we'll talk about a couple of specific areas, and then what we can do to help the limbic system function better. You guys stick around with us. We'll be right back right after these messages. Okay, everybody, we're still waiting on the guys on the radio to come back with us, so um, we'll just visit for just a second. That limbic system is that emotional connection really is a huge deal in the way that we function with other people. And if you're having trouble personally dealing with that, and you're having trouble with connecting, there's some things that you might be able to do to work on that. And one of them is to do some EMDR type stuff, or some bottom up training. And we've talked about that in other shows in the past. And so you can go back and look through some of our shows when we talked about, especially in the body keeps the score. That's an area that might be interesting to you right there. So because you can reset some of those systems and get yourself to be more social. You don't have to live your whole life with it being that way. So give me 1 second and let me get us back online with the other guys. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemens, DC, and we are talking about the limbic system, the deep limbic system that's inside of our brain, and this is part of Chapter 3 of Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, Dr. Daniel Amen. We were talking about his book last night, and we're taking this segment right now, and we are breaking it down, and we're making it, we're just talking about specifically Chapter 3, and that's what we're trying to do tonight. So I just want to keep going from where we were. And he says in his book, I studied this phenomenon in an adult male who had problems with depression and increased activity in his deep limbic systems on SPECT. I asked him to make passionate love with his wife and then rescanned him within an hour. His limbic activity was significantly decreased. Yeah, so it's sexuality is good for the bonded human brain. And if we can get our limbic system to kind of calm, our emotional system to calm down a little bit, it'll give us that time to connect. Whenever a person is sexually involved with another person, neurochemical changes occur in both their brains that encourages limbic emotional bonding. Yet, limbic bonding is the reason casual sex doesn't really work for most people on a whole mind and body level. Two people may decide to have sex just for the fun of it, yet something is occurring on another level that they might not have decided on at all. Sex is enhancing an emotional bond between them, whether they want it or not. One person, often the woman, is bound to form an attachment and will be hurt when a casual affair ends. One reason is usually the woman who is hurt is most the reason that the woman who is hurt most is that the female limbic system is larger than the males. See, it's not because you're a woman. It's not a sexual um, like some sort of insult that we're saying, that Dr. Amen is saying. What he's saying is that there's actually a physical part of your brain in a woman that's bigger than the physical part of the brain in the man's, that emotional connection right there. Um, One likely consequence is that she will become more limbically connected. I once treated a patient named Renee who had a high sex drive. She was not sexually satisfied by her husband. For years, other men flirted with her, and she remained faithful until one day she decided, out of pure frustration, to have an affair with a coworker. This might be something that might be talking a little bit close to somebody right now, right? From the outset, they agreed that they were going to have friendly sex. I know we still can talk about this on this show, I think. It's fair, right? Just for fun, just for the pleasure, and in the first 2 months, that seemed to work. When Renee felt herself wanting to see him more often, she tried to get him to meet with her twice a week instead of once a week, as they had originally agreed. Instead of responding positively, her lover pulled away. The more attached she became, the more detached he became. Although Renee and her lover had been on the same wavelength in the beginning, and in the end, she had changed and he hadn't. She felt used. It is important to understand how your body and psyche work. In this case, Renee would have been wise to realize that her limbic system was not quite as open to casual sex as she wanted it to be, right? And that's what the good book's trying to tell us, right? The good book tries to tell us the stuff that was way around a way a long time before we started learning about the brain. That's what's amazing about that. I have never found in any of my research anything that's contradictory about what I've learned in the Bible. I've never found it. Everybody's aware that tries to separate science and religion. And to me, what that book is saying, you just have to understand how to interpret the book. You just have to understand. You have to have a level of wisdom and the attention that you bring to it, and how you see it, and what mood that you're in, and what your goal is. But it's like, yeah, this is the research that says, hey, having casual sex with someone is just jacks up your brain. That's not the way your brain was made. Your brain was made to make love to someone, right? I mean, to get into it, but that's just true. She would have been better off to stay with her husband and work things out sexually with him rather than to pick a casual acquaintance for a sexual liaison. As mentioned above, current research has demonstrated that females, on average, have a larger deep limbic system than males. This gives females several advantages and disadvantages. Because of their larger deep limbic brain, women are more in touch with their feelings, and they are generally better able to express their feelings than men. They have an increased ability to bond and to be connected to others, which is why women are the primary caretakers of children. There is no society on earth where men are primary caretakers of children. That's not social. That's not sexual. That's not some sort of some male chauvinist type of statement right there. It's a brain statement. And he wrote this in 1998, remember? And so just imagine the nonsense that goes on today when women are men and men are women and all that stuff that's happening, right? It's not, their brains didn't change. That's not true, right? They have an increased ability to bond and be connected to others, which is why women are the primary caretakers of children. Yes, females have a more acute sense of smell, which is likely to have developed from an evolutionary need from the mother to recognize her young, or God made it that way. Having a larger, deep limbic system leaves a female somewhat more susceptible to depression, especially at times of significant hormonal changes, such as the onset of puberty, before menses, after the birth of a child, and at menopause. Women attempt suicide 3 times more often than men, yet men's suicide attempts are successful 3 times more often than women's, in part because they use a more violent means. Women tend to use overdose with pills, while men tend to use shooting or hanging themselves. That's really depressing, right? And men are generally less connected to others than are women. Disconnection from others increases the risk of completed suicides. That's kind of interesting. It increases the risk of completed suicides. The deep limbic system, especially the hypothalamus at the base of the brain, is responsible for translating our emotional state into physical feelings of relaxation or tension. The front half of the hypothalamus sends calming signals to the body through the parasympathetic nervous system. The back half of the hypothalamus sends stimulating or fear signals to the body through the sympathetic nervous system. The back half of the hypothalamus, when stimulated, is responsible for the fight or flight response, a primitive state that gets us ready to fight or flee when we are threatened or scared. This hardwired response happens immediately upon activation, such as seeing or experiencing an emotional or physical threat. The heart beats faster, heart rate and blood pressure increase, the hands and feet become more cooler and shunt blood from the extremities to the big muscles, and the pupils dilate to see better. Well, I had a conversation with one of my girls this week about she was worried because one of the things that we do is, as part of the new patient experience in our office, is we do the reflex probe pupillary light reflex, and we test what's going on with your eyes. Well, she came in because her back was hurting, and during the exam of her neurology, I found out a lot more that was going on with her than she even remembered. She didn't remember falling and hitting her head. She didn't remember some of the things that had happened earlier in her life. And she came to see me because her back was hurting. And her back was hurting because her posture was off. And her posture was off, in my opinion, because of what's going on in her brain. And so what I said to her when I made her notebook, and I gave her a notebook, I said, I write a little paragraph in there to each one of the new patients about what I've found and what's going on and what I think I can do to help you and all that sort of thing. Well, I wrote that in her book. I said, I just think there's more going on with you than just your back pain. And I think you're going to see that you're going to get some, as you start to get adjusted and as you start to get care in our office, and as we start to reestablish new neural pathways, and as we adjust your spine, like I was just talking about just a second ago, I think what you're going to see is an overall gain in health that you're going to be really happy with, that's not just about back pain. And it was so funny because I had written that up for her, and then she came into the office, and it was our it was her third visit. Her first 2 visits were pretty close. We did her exam and everything, but I gave her that notebook, and she had a whole list of questions for me because she had gotten on the phone with her sister and talked about her mom and her aunt that had MS and other kind of depression and different kinds of things like that. And she had a whole list of questions for me about, do you think I need to go get this checked out? Do you think there's something else that I need to do? Do you think I need to be, our sister was asking all these questions of concern, which is really cute. It was like, great. It was great, but we had already I had already typed all that stuff up for her and put it in her notebook. So it was really awesome for me because what we detected in our exam was deeper than just her back pain. But then after she got to talking with her sister about what we'd found, we had already addressed it. And we'd already said, I already told her, look, just start getting adjusted.
Give me a little bit of time. Take your vitamin D, take your fish oil, do the things that we ask you to do, and then let's get some time on. Let's get a couple of weeks of care under your belt. Let's get 30 days of care under your belt, and then let's see what you have left, and it will be different, right? So let's get into some of the problems here. Some of the problems um, in the deep limbic system: moodiness, irritability, clinical depression, increased negative thinking, negative perception of events, decreased motivation, flow of negative emotions, appetite and sleep problems, decreased or increased sexual responsiveness, and social isolation. So if you got problems in your limbic system, those are some of the things that will show up. The problems in the deep limbic system, as in all other systems, generally correspond to their functions. Do you know people who see every situation in a bad light? That um, that pessimism actually could be deep limbic system problems because, as mentioned, when this part of the brain is working too hard, the emotional filter is colored by negativity. One person could walk away from an interaction that 10 others would have labeled as positive, but what he or she considers negative. And since the deep limbic system affects motivation, some people sometimes develop an I don't care attitude about life and work. They don't have the energy to care. Because they feel hopeless about the outcome, they have little willpower to follow through with tasks. They get that I don't care because that limbic system is firing, and it's also causing some issues for them in their dopamine levels. So when that causes those issues for them in their dopamine levels, what do? They go to an external source such as sugar, alcohol, pornography, something like that, to try to give them some sort of motivation to live through the day. Right? If you got somebody that's dealing with all that stuff, I can't give up my sugar, can't give up my sugar. Yeah, there's some brain things going on right there. Okay? Bonding disruption. Bonding and limbic problems often go hand in hand. One of the most fundamental bonds in the human universe is the mother-infant bond. Hormonal changes shortly after childbirth, however, can cause limbic or emotional problems in the mother. They are called the baby blues when they are mild, and postpartum depression or psychosis when they are severe. You know, one of the things that is related to the postpartum depression is your omega-3 levels in your brain. If you get your omega-3 levels up in your brain and you get your brain to function like it's supposed to, it dampens a lot of that postpartum depression. When these problems arise, the deep limbic system of the mother's brain shows abnormal activity, the phenomenon which has been detected in animals as well as humans. In turn, significant bonding problems may occur. The mother may emotionally withdraw from the baby, preventing the baby from developing normally. Babies who experience failure to thrive, for instance, or who have low weight or delayed development, often have mothers who are unattached emotionally. We had a baby just this last week in Lubbock, Texas, that was left in a dumpster. The mother left the baby in a dumpster. I mean, it's like, man, that's a bad deal. Like, really, that's a bad deal for the mother, bless her heart. That's a bad deal for the baby. That whole thing, the baby was found, the baby was taken to the hospital, the baby is fine, the baby should be able to go home with, I don't know, another family member, obviously. But what an interesting experience that baby gets to deal with, right? Um, Babies who experience, I've told that. In such cases, the abnormal activity of the mother's deep limbic system causes developmental problems for the baby. Conversely, problems in the deep limbic system can be caused by outside events that disrupt the human bonding process. This can occur at any stage of life, and here are three of the most common. Number one thing that can disrupt the limbic bonding is death. The death of a parent, spouse, or child causes intense sadness and grief. In these familiar relationships, there is often a tight neurochemical bond from the myriad of stored emotional memories and experiences. Remember that chemical bond of emotions that I just talked about with Candace Pert. When it is broken, the activity of the limbic system is disrupted. Many who experience grief say the pain actually feels physical. The sensation is not imaginary. Grief is often activates the pain centers in the brain, which are housed near the deep limbic system. Yeah, we talk about that all the time. Mental emotional stress increases pain sensitivity. And I can't tell you which is which. When a person comes in and they've been mentally emotionally stressed out, they will have pain in their body. When a person falls off the ladder, they will have pain in their body. When they come into the office, I can't tell you which is which. All I can show is that they have some sort of pain in their body that brought them into the office. And so it's very necessary to look at them from a physical, chemical, and a mental emotional standpoint. All those are super important. Um, and he goes on to talk about losing a spouse and the connection. And he goes into deep limbic connection doesn't depend only on sexual intimacy. Another often overlooked deep limbic loss is the loss of a family pet. Many people become as attached to their pets as they do to significant people in their lives. So if you lose a pet, that can become a problem. Empty nest syndrome is another way. These are ways that we have bonding disruption. So when children leave home, parents often feel intensely sad. Many lose their appetites and have trouble sleeping. Something is missing. This may be confusing because the parents remember how arduous it was struggling through the growing pains of their offspring, adolescents, and they assumed it would be a relief when the teenagers were finally out of the house and off on their own lives. It has been suggested that the discordant nature of this parent-child relationship during adolescence may be nature's way of helping parents and teens make the transition from the close bond of childhood to the total independence of young adulthood. Yet, no matter how difficult these adolescent years were for both sides, tremendous bonds still exist and breaking it is stressful. So, that was divorce is the next one. So, divorce can be a source of the most severe kind of stress it is possible for a human being to experience. For many, it actually causes more anguish to lose a spouse through divorce than it does through death. As stated above, people who are limbically connected have a very powerful bond, and I believe this phenomenon may be one of the major reasons women cannot leave abusive men. They have had their children with these men, they share beds and their homes with them. To break that bond, which is at the core of their brain, causes a severe rupture that can make the woman feel fragmented as if she were not quite whole without the man. I'm just reading Dr. Amon's book. She may feel plagued by sleep and appetite problems, depression, irritability, and social isolation. I once treated a woman who was married to a controlling, angry man who she could never please. On the day he told her he was leaving for another woman, causing her a severe limbic injury, she became so depressed that she put her head in the oven and turned on the gas. Oh my gosh. Fortunately, she was rescued and taken to the hospital. It wasn't until her deep limbic system began to heal, and that's a major importance right there. When your deep limbic system has an injury, your deep limbic system can heal. Don't give up hope. Don't give up hope right there. And she could feel her own autonomy that she realized she didn't even like her husband. And in any case, it was certainly wasn't worth killing herself over a man who cheated on her. So those are different ways that we can have bonding disruption. Another thing is depression. Lack of bonding and depression are often related. People who are depressed often do not feel like being around others and consequently isolate themselves. The social isolation tends to perpetuate itself. The more isolated a person becomes, the less bonding activity occurs. So we can get into depression. And I want to get back here to the back before we run out of time tonight. Because he gets into manic depressive disorders, he gets into PMS, and he goes through a deep limbic checklist on page 53, and you answer 1 through 4 on there. So let's talk about some of the prescriptions that he says. In the prescription, this is enhancing positive thought patterns and strengthening connections. Deep limbic system prescriptions. So uh, these are prescriptions that he says that you can deal with when you have deep limbic system problems. Number one, kill the ants, ANTS. And our overall state of mind has a certain tone or flavor based largely on types of thoughts we think. When the deep limbic system is overactive, it sets the mind's filter on negative. People who are depressed have one disparaging thought following another. When they look in the past, they feel regret. When they look at the future, they feel anxiety and pessimism. In the present moment, they are bound to find something unsatisfactory. He calls these automatic negative thoughts. And he says, hey, you got to kill these automatic negative thoughts. How do you do that? Realize that your thoughts are real. You have a thought, your brain releases chemicals, an electrical transmission goes across your brain, you become aware that you're thinking. Notice how negative thoughts affect your body. It's super important right there. Notice how the body reacts to every thought you have. Notice how positive thoughts affect your body. Think of bad thoughts as pollution. You got to get them out of there. Understand that your autonomic your automatic thoughts don't always tell the truth. That's super important. When I'm fussy at Leslie, and then all of a sudden the whole world is negative, sometimes I have to remind myself that's not true. That's not true. Like my thoughts are lying to me. That's not what I want to do. Talk back to your ants. Talk back to those negative thoughts, right? Tell them, hey, look, take control of yourself. Eliminate the ants. Those are things that you can do. And he gets into them pretty deep right there in the rest of that chapter. But then he also talks about some other coping mechanisms. Surround yourself with people who provide positive bonding. Protect your children with limbic bonding. Build people skills to enhance limbic bonds. Recognize the importance of physical contact. And he gets back here in the back and he's like, surround yourself with great smells. That's another one that he says. Make sure you're getting good smells around you. Build a library of wonderful memories. Consider limbic medications. Yeah, there's some of them right there. Also, the supplements. And try physical exercise. Physical exercise can be very healing to the deep limbic system. It releases endorphins that induce the sense of well-being. The deep limbic system has many endorphin receptors. So you can really get into that back end right there. So, hey, I hope that some of that helps. We've run out of time. So I hope that helps you. I hope you guys have a great week. Or tomorrow night, we'll be back at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. So I hope you guys have a great night. And you guys take care of yourself. Thanks for watching the show. And I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Okay. Thank you.